r/nosleep. Posted by you/likeeyedid. My girlfriend started drawing as a form of trauma therapy. Ever since Evelyn had come back, she had gotten adjusted to very strange ways of doing things. There were a number of particular steps she would go through before conducting the most mundane tasks. The ones we all run with our very own autopilot, but hers seemed entirely out of sync. There were many different things she did with the rules she had come up with herself. To give you only one example, if Evelyn wanted to go to the grocery store, and she went there every day, there were 4 steps before leaving home. There were more for the way there, but let's start with these first. Step 1, she would say out loud, to me or maybe to herself, I wasn't sure. Step 1 is to get dressed properly. A sundress like the one I'm wearing right now is perfectly fine. However, we need to be prepared for whatever the sky might surprise us with. For that reason we wear a raincoat, a little sweat won't kill us. And we need an umbrella too, of course. She put on the yellow raincoat and made sure the umbrella was leaning on the door so she definitely wouldn't forget to grab it. Step 2. Preparation comes in many ways and we always need to know precisely what we need. She held up the list of grocery items she had prepared before. It had to be written on a checked paper with a pencil. Step 3. The grocery bag must always contain one item already. One that is edible and that we bought before. She shook the tote bag but there was no sound. So she proceeded to open it slightly so we both saw the lemon that was inside. She nodded at me and I reciprocated by raising my eyebrows. Step 4. We only pay with coins, I interrupted her and handed over the small wool bag that she had sewed herself. It has become my routine to go to the bank almost every other day to exchange banknotes for coins. Evelyn smiled. A genuine one, not the one she had been giving me for the last 12 days. It was 12 days ago that she had appeared back on our doorstep. And it was 24 days ago that she had gone to the gym and disappeared without a trace. Not a letter, not a text or a call. Not to me or anyone else that she knew. She simply vanished. I called the police the very same night but they couldn't do anything yet. She was an adult after all. When there still was no trace of my girlfriend the following days, they started a search troop. Of course, I had alarmed everyone I knew, posted on all sorts of social media that I otherwise hardly ever used, hung up posters. Some said that she had just left me but I didn't believe that. People don't go away without packing a single item. Even her passport was still in the closet. Others were mumbling that if she hadn't come back by now chances were high that she certainly must be dead. They didn't say it to my face but I knew. And so after nights and nights of horror and fear and sadness, I nearly had a heart attack when I saw her suddenly standing on our doorstep. Her normally long, curly hair was trimmed to shoulder length. She was wearing the clothes of the day she had gone missing but they didn't look a bit dirty. And her smile was still exactly the same. That toothpaste smile that I had been thinking about every single day. 1 second later she was jumping into my arms. I asked her what happened. The police interrogated her. Everyone was curious. She would just shrug and say that she didn't remember but that she was feeling perfectly fine. Nothing bad could have happened because she didn't feel bad. Of course, that was bullshit. I'm not saying that she was lying, I would never say that even if I almost lost my cool a couple of times. This whole mess was destroying me as well. But I still don't think she was lying. No, I believed something so entirely horrific happened to her that her mind chose to forget. You see, I love Evelyn and I don't mind her newfound routines. When people gave her weird looks for wearing a raincoat on what felt like the hottest day of the year, I went and bought a matching one so that at least they would whisper about both of us. When the cashier rolled their eyes at the sight of all the coins, I'd take the bag with a smile and proceed to carefully choose each one before handing it over. I bought multiple umbrellas, just in case. I have no idea why but it somehow seemed to help her. It helped her forget about whatever she went through. After 6 days she even started sleeping in bed with me again. Before that, she couldn't stand the thought of not being alone at night. And flinched each time I even tried to touch her. After our first hug, physical contact had become close to none. I was getting used to our new regular quite quickly but the therapist disagreed when it came to my theory of Evelyn coping by going through steps for everything. That's when he suggested art therapy. A way for her brain to communicate differently. You see, the left hemisphere of our brain is generally in charge of logical thinking and language production. The right hemisphere is in charge of emotions and creativity. Now the distinction often isn't that important as they are both connected by the corpus callosum. The bridge between both sides so to say. Without the connection, we wouldn't be able to draw a picture of a word someone gives us. Now because they are connected this usually is no problem, however, there is a theory that there seems to be a failure in connection. In communication. Have you ever felt incredibly sad but simply didn't know the reason why? Possibly the left hemisphere simply couldn't form the words for you to understand. Now it was very far-fetched, but we were desperate to find any solution to the case of Evelyn, and that's when the idea of art therapy came up. Maybe Evelyn couldn't find the words for what happened but draw them instead. I went and bought art supplies that same day, and while I thought she might be reluctant at first, she gave me a bright smile when she saw the empty canvases, the brushes, and all the different acrylic colors. "Are there steps for drawing as well?" I asked. She tilted her head. "That depends. Do you want to join me?" "No, let this be your hobby. I might play some music in the meantime." She nodded as if I had given precisely the right answer. "Then we shall keep the steps to ourselves." I was prepared for the worst. The past weeks had been massively nerve-wracking for me as well, though I didn't want to imagine what kind of hell poor Evelyn had gone through that got her this fucked up. There was one thought that kept coming back to me. There was one that seemed rather obvious due to the way she was acting, but I didn't feel proven in my theory until I saw her paintings. She kept them secret at first. "I'm not ready for you to see yet." It took me all the self-control I had not to go inside the small office room she was using as her new atelier, but I stayed patient. I stayed patient, nervously waiting for the horrors I might look at. Well, I tried. I really did. Everyone loses control sometimes, don't they? I'm not proud to admit that I didn't stay the patient boyfriend for long. When Evelyn went through the steps of planting a new flower in the garden, I told her I was going to take a nap. Instead, I walked into the office. It was strange. I felt like an intruder in my own home, and somehow I was, but I really thought that I needed to help her. That she was overwhelmed by the things she drew and was scared to show me. Needless to say, I expected anything but the paintings I found. They were beautiful. Not only the technique she used, Evelyn had always been more of the creative kind, but with the drawings, it wasn't only the style. No, the objects were beautiful as well. Fields in 3 shades of green with a baby blue sky and not a single cloud. A lake crystal clear that it almost appeared real. Hills in perfect shape, one only slightly bigger than the next. I sighed. On one hand, I was relieved not to see blood, dead bodies, maybe the face of a murderer. But at the same time, I felt disappointed. I wished deep inside that this would somehow help us solve the puzzle. "You've been naughty." I jumped at the voice of Evelyn behind me. She spoke in such a shrill voice that I thought she was furious, but when I turned around she simply looked like an angry child with her arms crossed in front of her chest. "You made a promise, Nick." I opened my mouth but didn't know what to say. I should have apologized, but instead, I said I thought maybe you drew the place you went to. "Well, silly. I did. That is the grass I was lying in. I watched the clouds but they were gone right away. There was no sun but we didn't mind." "We?" I asked. "No, me. You weren't there." I sighed. "Ev, you're making no sense. You weren't lying in the grass for 3 weeks. You were gone. I thought you were dead, kidnapped, or whatever." I couldn't hold it in anymore and hated myself seconds later for raising my voice, but she seemed unbothered. She only shrugged. "That's where I was. Believe me or not. I told you I was fine." She turned around but I grabbed her arm before she could leave. "Was it a cult? The ones that took you?" "No. The ones you were with? You can tell me, I won't judge." She shook her head. "No. I didn't get anything else out of here that evening. Or the next, but I did continue to follow her routines even more. I took part in them as a way to understand her situation better, and somehow it really did seem to help. She trusted me more and more each day, and I could feel that she was starting to open up. This is why I was completely thrown off by the next drawing she made. This one she didn't hide. No, she hung it right in our living room. It was the same green field, except for this time there was a person in the middle of it. It looked just like me, hyper-realistic. She was talented for sure, but this skill was definitely new. The person looked exactly like me, but something was different. I had no nose and no mouth. And the eyes, my very own eyes, were piercing through me. That image of me sent the coldest shiver down my spine. When I asked Evelyn about it, she said that it wasn't me, but that I didn't need to worry. He didn't need the nose or the mouth, or ears for that matter. Nobody would hear him scream. At that moment, I'm not sure if it was progress or a setback, but I believed that I was getting just a little closer to figuring out what happened. At least I thought I did. And I needed her to tell or show more, so I made sure Evelyn would be comfortable and keep drawing. One day she was so sucked into a new painting that she was working at that I suggested getting groceries on my own. She was reluctant. At first. But then I verbally went through the steps. Got my raincoat, umbrella, the bag with an apple inside, coins. And I will write a list. All right, I trust you, honey. Just one moment, yes. She kept scribbling while looking up after every word she wrote. Then she handed it over. Do everything as always, yes? I nodded. Of course. I made my way to the store with those damn loud coins and the raincoat that was far too hot, but I had promised it and I intended to keep it. Until I was finally at the store and got the list out that Evelyn had written. -200 milliliters don't listen. -3 pieces to a word I say. -500 grams do not follow. -1 liter the steps will trap you. -2 jars don't let Evelyn know. The first 2 words were all written in cursive. But the others weren't.